Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. My family and I had lived in our cozy suburban neighborhood for over 15 years without any major issues. That all changed when a new neighbor moved in next door, an entitled, self-righteous woman who quickly earned the nickname Karen due to her obnoxious behavior. From day one, Karen was a thorn in our side. She constantly complained about minor things like our flower beds being half an inch over the property line or our kids playing basketball in our own driveway. Karen somehow felt she had the authority to dictate what we could and couldn't do on our own property. Her harassing behavior ramped up over time. Karen would bang on our front door at all hours to lodge noise complaints if she heard the TV too loud. She called the police when my teenager had a few friends over for a pool party, claiming it was a wild rager. Every interaction was confrontational and condescending. The final straw came when Karen tried having my wife's beloved 12-year-old dog taken away. She claimed the vicious beast barked too much and therefore disturbed her peace and quiet. I could not believe her audacity. Thankfully, the authorities saw right through her petty attempt to separate us from our pet. At that point, I'd had enough of Karen's campaign of harassment against my family. Her selfish actions were negatively impacting our lives, and I refused to let it continue. I decided to take matters into my own hands and fight fire with fire. First, I installed security cameras pointing at Karen's house to document her coming and going in case she tried anything else. Then I looked up public records and found that Karen had failed to pay her home insurance for months. I anonymously reported this violation, and just like that, her policy was canceled. Next, I dug deeper into records and discovered Karen's mortgage was through a high-risk subprime lender with sky-high interest rates. I learned she was already struggling to make payments. So I orchestrated a brilliant plan with some hacker contacts to have Karen's automatic mortgage payments randomly fail to go through. Without the payments, she started racking up penalties and her credit score plummeted. The effect was immediate. Karen began receiving foreclosure notices from the bank, threatening to repossess her home if she didn't pay. But of course, with her credit in shambles thanks to my handiwork, Karen couldn't possibly qualify for refinancing or a loan to get out of default. Watching Karen descend into panic and despair as she faced losing her precious house brought me an immense feeling of satisfaction. The once entitled, boastful woman who harassed my family was now a nervous wreck, having sleepless nights and yelling into the phone with her bank. The final coup de grace was calling Karen's employer and exposing some choice racist rants she had made against her Hispanic coworkers. I provided undeniable audio proof that I paid a hacker to extract from Karen's phone. Just 48 hours later, Karen was fired for her despicable remarks. With no job and no way to save her home from foreclosure, Karen was utterly defeated. She put up a pathetic for sale sign in front of her house, but with her financial troubles, no buyer would touch the place. I observed with delight as the bank eventually booted Karen from the premises. As the movers came to repossess Karen's belongings, I walked to the property line, looked her in the eyes, and said, "Don't mess with my family ever again." The once fiery, entitled Karen could only stare at the ground in shame, at a total loss for words. Karen soon disappeared from the neighborhood, no doubt to a cheap rental she could barely afford. I had single-handedly driven her from her home and destroyed her livelihood. But I had no pity. She deserved it after the months of hell she put my family through. We now have new neighbors who keep to themselves, just as I like. And I still have those hacker contacts on speed dial in case anyone dares cross me or my loved ones again. When you target my family, you better believe I'll target you right back, harder. Karen learned that lesson the hard way when she discovered she's no match for my fierce devotion and resourcefulness. Justice was served at last. The next one is a pro-revenge story. I'm a field technician. I work on proprietary equipment. I get a service call to work on a small piece of equipment. I walk in and introduce myself to the guy at the counter. My contact is upstairs, but the machine is just off the entrance. She comes down and introduces herself and explains the issues. They are simple and won't take too much time to resolve. Enter smarmy salesman. SS is an older guy that is dripping with the snake oil salesman vibe. SS starts chatting with young woman, polite and cordial at first. Then he blurts out, "What I want to know is how you got those pants on." YW immediately turns red and then SS yells, "Ha ha, she is blushing!" Meanwhile, I'm working on the machine, my blood is boiling. But I was torn on what to do. I'm a vendor technician. I was afraid that I would lose my job if I said anything. So I finished and went over to YBW and explained what I had done and the machine is working correctly. And I leave. I put my tool bag away, I get behind the steering wheel, start the car. My conscience is screaming at me, I can't leave until I say something. I go back in and everyone is gone. Everyone went off to do their thing, so I thought it was over. But my conscience would not let it rest. That was a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday were full of what happened on Friday. On Monday, I sat down and researched the local company and their parent company. I collected several email addresses from both companies, and I wrote a very detailed explanation of who I was and what happened, sent from my personal email address. Tuesday morning, my phone rings. It is the HR manager from the local company. He thanked me for my email. He also stated that he corroborated the story with YW, who confirmed that it happened as I stated. He then tells me that SS was fired and the whole company will be given a course on sexual harassment. He then adds, I have an 18-year-old daughter. I never want her to spoken to in that manner. I thanked him for following up with me. The next one is a petty revenge story. So many moons ago, I moved into an apartment, second floor. At the time, I was about 21 and I'm a guy. Nice place and decent part of town. Not long after I moved in, I noticed one of my second floor neighbors kept trying to look into my living room through, around, any way possible past my curtains. I need to tell the layout of the apartment before I go any further. From front to back, I had a sunroom, fully inside the house, but windows everywhere in this room that gets a lot of light, and faces the street and neighbors across the street, church and church parking lot, where we all parked for street cleaning. Past the sunroom was the living room, from there into the kitchen, then to the hallway which leads to the bathroom in both bedrooms, Master BR being the last room in the back that also leads to a porch for our apartment. So back to the story. I would always be nice to anyone and would chat here and there with most of the neighbor ladies, which were all nice. All except for one. She thought she was the queen of the street and had to know what everyone was doing at any time. She would constantly try to look through my windows to see what was going on in my apartment. She was about 65 years old or so. I would always see her craning her neck and head around to see into my apartment. I would try to ask her to stop, but she would never answer her door. Finally, after about 6 months of this, I decided to give her something to look at. So one morning I got a shower, put on a robe, and went out to the sunroom. I always had the curtains closed at night, and if I was undressed. I looked around the street and everywhere I could see to make sure no one was out and looking, but mainly wanted to make sure she was trying to look into my house. There she was craning her neck trying to look through my closed curtains. Me, still having my robe around me, opened the curtains, saw her again trying to look into my apt. Opened my robe in full view, in the middle of that window. I thought she had a heart attack since her face contorted, and she grabbed her chest LOL. Of course, her being a Karen called the cops to try to get me arrested. Well, the cops show up at her place, then come over to mine. I had gotten dressed by this time, so went downstairs to open the door and talk to them, since I already knew what it was about. Cop 1. Yeah, we got a report of you standing naked in front of your window. Me. Yeah, wanna know why? I'll tell you. Ever since I moved into my apt, that old hag has been damn near breaking her neck to try to look into my apt every day. Me and my roommate have tried to ask her to stop, but she never answers her door. I finally got tired of her being a peeping Tom and gave her something to look at, and before you say anything, no one else was around when I did it. It's not my fault her 65-year-old ass can't handle seeing what I have. Cop 1 and 2, laughing their asses off. Cop 1, trying to catch his breath. Okay. I'll go talk to her and tell her that she can actually be arrested for peeping and making a false report. Do you want to press charges? Me. Nah, I think she learned her lesson. But if she didn't, she'll get it again. But next time it'll be a lil more than she's gonna bargain for. Cop 1 and 2, laugh again. Just make sure no one's around if you have to do that again. They left, walked across the street, and about 10 mins later they left, still laughing. She never tried to look into my house again. Yes, this actually happened, and yes, I actually did that. I have nothing to hide and don't really care. If you want to break your neck to look into my house like you think you can, then don't be surprised at what you see and don't complain about what you see when I finally get tired of that, and I flash you stark-ass naked. The next one is a malicious compliance story. One of the reasons my marriage works is that my husband and I have very similar opinions most of the time. One of the notable exceptions to this is the parking brake. When I learned to drive, I was taught to use the parking brake every time I parked. Once I got my license, I learned that not everyone actually does that. I made a conscious decision to continue to use the parking brake for every park. It's better to use it when it's not needed than to forget it when it is needed. Also, building the habit of taking the brake on and off means I'm less likely to end up driving around with the parking brake on and eventually needing an expensive repair. My husband only uses the parking brake when he parks on a very steep hill. Parked on any hill, he turns the steering wheel so that if the car rolls, it will roll into the curb. He actually does what a lot of people do, including my driving instructor. He turns the wheel, then lets the car roll until it's touching the curb. He claims this is extra safe. I don't think it's any safer than just turning the wheel. Tires are expensive and it's unnecessary wear and tear on them to leave them smashed up against a curb. We've come to an agree to disagree about the parking brake. He sometimes grumbles a little when he drives a car that I drove earlier and has to remember to take the brake off, but it's not really any kind of big deal. Well, my stepdaughter learned to drive. Her dad has been the main driving instructor, but, with his blessing because I'm not her actual parent, I've done some driving instruction too. The first time the emergency brake came up, we explained that her dad and I had different habits about how we use the parking brake. We told her that for simplicity while she was learning, she should do it Dad's way, but when she's out driving on her own, she'll eventually develop her own habits. This was about a year ago. Today my stepdaughter drove and it was the first time she parked on a hill by a curb. It was a slight hill, but definitely a hill. She parked by the curb and asked if she should use the parking brake. At the same time I said yes and her dad said no. He instructed her to turn the wheel and let the car roll into the curb, and that was good enough. I let him finish this instruction. When we got out, though, I said that I prefer to use the emergency brake and not press the tires against the curb. I didn't say his way was wrong, I just shared that do the same parking job a different way than her dad does it. This is a normal thing we've done throughout her learning to drive. Well, I don't know. My husband must have gotten up on the wrong side of the bed because he got a little salty and said, "Maybe you should read the driver's manual and see what it says about parking." I was a little annoyed, but I was going to let it drop. However, once we got where we were headed and I had a minute, I thought I should do just that. We currently live in a different state than the one I learned to drive in, and I've never read the driver manual for this state. I have no idea what the laws or suggestions about parking brakes are, so I pulled up the state manual on my phone and looked at the section on parking. Boom. Right at the top, you should use your parking brake every time you park. In the section on hill parking, it says to turn the wheel, but doesn't say to roll your car until the tire is up against the curb. I showed this to my stepdaughter, and she found it hysterical, especially since her dad did learn to drive in this state, from his dad who was a retired cop, although he also rarely uses his parking brake. My husband just rolled his eyes at me. I went on to tell my stepdaughter that the most important thing is to secure her car in some way when she parks on a hill. Her dad and I are both good drivers, and as she gets more experience, she'll figure out the things that make the most sense to her. The next one is an entitled people story, the usual BS with an entitled Karen. Couple of houses on the street are having renovation work done, so street parking is tighter than usual. Our driveway is very visible. Prominent curb cut, brick pavers that start at the sidewalk, you really cannot miss it. I come home from running a couple of errands and a Subaru is parked across our entire, and I mean entire, driveway. They couldn't have centered their car any better if they tried. So I grab another spot and schlep my crap into the house. A couple minutes later, I see a couple leaving the rental across the street and getting into the car. They're not renters there, maybe just visiting. I'm not a complete asshat, and I like the neighbors that live there, so I step onto the porch, get their attention, and in a very nice tone of voice, give them the, "Hey folks, just a heads up if you're back, you're parked in my driveway." The dude looks up, sees they were clearly in the wrong, and says, "Oh, sorry man, I didn't even notice. My bad." Which, meh, if that's how poorly you pay attention, you probably shouldn't even be driving, but I let it slide. Karen, on the other hand, "Don't worry about it, we're not parking here." Yeah, you dumb crap, you are parked there, but I'm still being at least a little nice. Well, whether you're staying or not, you're still blocking my driveway. K, it's not a big deal, you don't have to be a dick about it. Me, "Oh, if I wanted to be a dick, you'd know it." K, "Well, we're not parking here, so you don't have anything to idiot about." Me, done being nice. "Do you see that silver car parked right there?" I had to park there because you were already blocking my ducking driveway. So once again, you're currently ducking parked here. Dude apologizes again, tells Karen to STFU and just get in the car. We share a little nod and away they go. I'm kind of hoping that they visit more so I can just have her towed next time. The next one is an entitled parent story. I left home about a week and a half ago, the first day my family called my like crazy. I had only left a message. And I didn't answer, I only texted them. They were so insistent in me telling them where I was and to talk things through. I didn't go no contact because I still wanted and want them to be part of my life. I want both things. I want freedom, but I also want my family. But they kept on insisting that I go back and not do something I might regret, like not coming back home where it's safe and secure. I agreed to visit their apartment in the city during the day, because we live in a very small town, with the condition that I go back to my apartment at night. Every time I say goodnight, my mom starts crying, and my sister tells me I should think about them, not just me, and to not be so selfish. After many attempts on my part, after I left, they were willing to work things out and come to an agreement. But I don't want to come to an agreement. I want my full freedom. I don't want to go back because I know that I wouldn't have the freedom I have now. They promised to give me full freedom and autonomy as long as I go back and live with them, and have also suggested moving into their apartment but with my mom and sister accompanying me. I just don't believe it. And again, I know that I wouldn't have the freedom I have now. We started seeing a psychiatrist and I told him that one of my non-negotiables was moving back in with them and that I didn't know how they were going to handle the news because they were really hoping that I would and that I couldn't possibly be such a selfish person. My siblings have said that family comes first and that they are the only ones that would be there if I ever need them, unlike friends. But why then am I not being supported with this decision? Why has it caused so much chaos? I understand it's natural for parents to worry, and I know they mean well, but I refuse to be controlled. I truly don't understand why I can't have both. Why do I have to choose one or the other? I need to give them an answer, and my answer is one they are not going to like. I know I'm going to be casted off the community and that they will suffer, but what about me? Am I selfish? The next one is an entitled parent story. A common thing to happen in my family is my parents demanding me to buy them stuff off Amazon because, well, they are entitled. I have Amazon Prime, so I understand using my account. However, they also make me use my debit card to pay for stuff, and eventually do pay me back. Still, it's incredibly annoying. It's never been a huge amount of money, but this time around it was a set of chairs worth $500. I first rejected the idea, mostly given I am still in college and only made at $10 an hour at the time. $500 was about a fourth of the money I had in my bank account at the time. I told my entitled mom this, and she went off on me, claiming I don't love her, and that I don't trust her to pay me back, and begins to cry. You know, basic parental manipulation tactics. I comply and buy her the chairs, and I am out $500. She then tells me she will pay me back in about 3 days when my father gets paid. 3 days later, still no money. To avoid a fight, I just bite my tongue. Then a week passes, and then another week. After about 2 weeks of not being paid, I was incredibly pissed off. I also worked almost every night this summer at a customer service job, so naturally I want to relax on my days off. Cue my parents that decided we needed to deep clean the entire house. I am helping, and then I receive an email about an interview for an internship that I've been working hard to accomplish. I'm reading the email, and that's when it happened. Entitled Mom. So are you going to do any work today or just sit on your ass all day? Me, pissed off, tired. Really? You're going to say that after I bought those chairs for you? Entitled Father. You ungrateful son of a idiot, I pay for your college. Me. I'm not doing anything until you pay me back the $500. Entitled Mom, now crying. You're so disrespectful after everything we've done for you. Some fun details, my parents actually don't pay for my college. All the loans are in my name. My father's ego was hurt after bringing up that fact. I threatened to return the chairs, which only caused more fights. Long story short, I had to literally tattle on my father to my grandmother to get my money back, and they now have their chairs. This is a normal thing, and I really see myself going no contact in the future. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.